Hey everybody, happy Monday. It's Brigadier General Dan Tulley and Command Chief Master Sergeant Kenneth Bruce here with your April 6 Team IUD COVID-19 update. So what's the topic of the day, Chief?
Topic of the day is mask. That's right. You have to make sure you have one based off of the DOD guidance that came down last night. You want to make sure that you have conservative colors. Make sure you do it within style and within taste. But if you're out of the range of 6 feet from someone, you don't have to wear them. So with that, I'm going to make my way over here.
Too easy. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate everybody's patience with that. The order said effective immediately from CENTCOM, so that's exactly what we've done. All right, Chief, what's the next question we've got for today?
You ready? All right, first question comes from Lieutenant Matt Maynard from US 4AJ2 regarding financial entitlements. Do DoD members deployed to level 3 COVID-19 countries put them in a hazard, duty, or imminent danger working environment? Also, is the DoD considering a pay increase for service members deployed due to increased supply and demand for essential goods for family members back home?
That is a great question. So first off, there is no blanket extra pay increase to be expected. There is also no hazard pay or imminent danger pay for folks here at IUD Air Base. However, if you have some sort of financial difficulties, I'd encourage you to go ahead and see your first sergeant. What's next, Chief?
All right. With our options being limited, this is from Staff Sergeant Huffmaster from 379th ELRS. With our options being limited at the chow hall, instead of having the same items on both sides of the chow hall, can we have different options on each side?
Well, that's a great suggestion, and thanks. We'll take that up with the Force Support Squadron, but think of it this way. We have 3 DFACs, and we need to feed the entire population, and we need to do that fairly rapidly. We're serving about 15 to 16,000 meals a day. So we need to keep it simple, right? So folks come in, they get their food, and they process out, and they're done, all while maintaining 6 feet of separation. We'll see what we can do to increase the food options and also keep folks moving through there as quickly as possible. Next question.
Next 2 questions come from Technical Sergeant Navarre, 28 years. First question is, if there are no known cases on base and everyone arriving is being quarantined for 14 days on arrival, would it theoretically be improbable to transfer the virus at things like the bar or pool?
Great question, Tech Sergeant Navarre. The virus can spread through the air. Nowadays, it sounds like there are indications it can be spread simply by talking or being in the same room as somebody who's got the virus. We also know that it remains on certain surfaces for quite a long time, hours, possibly days. So it's very transmissible, very contagious, and we just can't take any chances.
This is the second question from Technical Sergeant Navarre. They said, I arrived here on March 30th within the quarantine area. New people are arriving each day and put in close contact, using the same restrooms and caged in a small fenced area. Is this whole quarantine process being thought through?
That is a great question, Tech Sergeant Navarre. So absolutely, very deliberately thought through. So take a step backwards and look at the big picture here. A lot of questions about should we pre-quarantine folks before they leave home station. We would love to be able to get to that, but right now there's no one definition. We can't really trust that someone at home station, and this has been proven several times already unfortunately, has remained COVID-free. So here we're still COVID-free on IUD and we want to keep it that way. So our concept for quarantine is that you come in, we identify you need to be quarantined for 14 days, you sign a quarantine order, you agree to follow all the conditions laid out in that order, and then we will put you in an area we're eventually fencing off, right? We couldn't just flip a switch and have a fenced off quarantine area, a food set up, and everything else that's required. But while you're in quarantine, our medical folks will take care of you and check your status twice a day, taking your temperature and everything else. Initially, they were feeding folks who were in quarantine. Now we're setting up a takeout capability at the Little Indy, a tent next to the Indy DFAC, so that we don't get the quarantine population mixing with the rest of the population. And then we have to have folks make sure that they keep the cohorts and the individuals who are in quarantine separate from each other. Also have to keep them separate from the main base population and keep them all separate from the transient population coming and going through IUD. So it's pretty complicated. We've put a lot of thought and effort into it. We're still standing this up. Some of the things that I just described are just now coming online. So if you've been in quarantine for the last 5, 6, 7 days, you've probably seen a lot of change and growth. But we're all responding to COVID-19 as quickly as we can and as best we can because we want to set the base up for the long term, right? We want to set this quarantine process up once and have it be good a year and a half, 2 years from now if we're still doing this. Great question.
All right, this one came from our Facebook page from Master Sergeant Harris from the 763rd Ears. He has an additional question about the quarantine areas. All right, here we go. If people are quarantined but are still going to the DFAC, how is that preventing a possible spread?
That is a great question. So a couple of things here. First, if people are in quarantine and you see them going to the DFAC, that's in violation of their quarantine order that they've signed. We need to understand that, report that, and let's get after those folks because we don't want them to reset everyone in quarantine and start their 14 days over again. But here's how it should work. So if you're in quarantine, initially food was being delivered by the medical group and by the Force Support Squadron as well. Then we transitioned to, we had the Independence DFAC, and as we put the fence up, we're transitioning to what we call the Little Indy, small tent next to the Indy DFAC. That's where folks who are in quarantine or in the transient tents, they're able to come there and get takeout food, but there's a strict schedule that's being enforced, and that keeps a separation between the different cohorts who are in quarantine, between the folks who are in quarantine and the transient quarters. All right? Thanks, that's a great question.
All right, our final question is from Master Sergeant Higgins from the 379th EMXS. Can AAFES resume tobacco sales? We cannot get them off base anymore.
Unfortunately, the answer right now is no. We cannot immediately begin tobacco sales on base. We want to do that through AAFES. We've asked them, but they're working through a number of issues. They have to work through some Qatari customs and taxation issues, and then we'll see if they can bring that capability onto the base. So more to follow. All right, so to wrap things up, I just want to say, and Chief from off camera probably wants to say,
yeah, great job, team.
Thanks for all your patience and your efforts dealing with COVID-19. There are a lot of unexpected changes, like the face mask that we're responding to. We're all doing the best we can. You guys have been outstanding in your support and for taking care of things the way you have as quickly as you have. It was only 3 hours ago we sent out the note about face masks and everybody at the DFAC was wearing them. So thank you for that. If you have questions, bring them up to your commanders first. That way, if we've already answered it or it's out there on our frequently asked questions page on the COVID-19 website, you can see what the official answer is. We're all on the same sheet of music. Thanks again. We'll talk to you soon.